Have a report. But first, our top story tonight. Syndicated radio shock jocks Opie and Anthony have been kicked off the air. Fired over this sex stunt they pulled inside St. Patrick's Cathedral. Last week, the duo broadcast an eyewitness account of a couple having sex inside the church. And yesterday, they were officially canned. Bill O'Reilly interviewed the pair recently, and they insisted they're careful to never cross the line. Right. Here is that never-before-seen interview.
The people you work for, the big operation, the big radio operation, do they care what you say on the air?
Without a doubt. We do every day. We have guidelines. We have FCC, rules we got to adhere to, and we do a very good job at that.
Well, you skirt it. You're smart.
Yeah,
we're
very smart. We know where the line is, and we tiptoe on the line, of course.
We know at this point what our audience likes. We know how to do it, and that's what we give them.
Well, what do they like? What do they want?
They like to be entertained in traffic.
Be specific, though. You just said, wait. You just said, we know what our audience likes, and we give it to them. I want specifically what they like.
Okay, you know what men like, Bill?
No,
talk about sex, talk about sports, talk about
entertainment,
hanging with their friends,
talk about
TV shows.
Talk about sex.
No,
sex is number one.
There's sex in there, sure.
We wouldn't consider sex number one on our show. No
Really?
way. No way.
Every time I tune in,
the media likes to
well, wait a minute. Every time I tune into your
way.
program, there's a babe taking off her top, or there's a discussion of lesbians.
I listen every day, Bill.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Every time I tune in, there's a sexual theme. I'm not hearing the ball scores. If you took sex out of the Opie and Anthony show, you got a lot of dead air, you know what I mean?
No, we don't.
We fill it up.
We fill it up.
Without any sex?
Sometimes we go weeks without doing anything. I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
I'm talking about on the air, not off the air.
No, on the air. It goes in stages, and we'll even check ourselves. And I'll go to Ann, Ann, we're getting a little too much sex on the show lately. Let's back off, and then we'll.
This is easy. Sex is easy.
It is. If you cannot be successful in this business just doing sex every day.
So, should the shock jocks have been fired for their latest stunt? Joining us now are Bob Peters. Bob's the president of Morality in Media. And in Washington, Doug Tracht. He's a radio talk show host. He's known as the Grease Man. Well, Mr. Peters, why don't you react to the decision to fire these guys?
Well, I think it's great in two respects. I think they merited being fired. They should have been fired a long time ago. But, I regard myself as a political conservative, and I say, one of the best ways to, reduce the size of government is to reduce the need for it. And when corporations, even after a long delay, do the right thing, there's less need for government. So I'm glad Infinity Broadcasting, for once, has done the right thing.
Mr. Tracht, you've been caught in situations where you've actually lost your job because of some things that you've said on the air. How do you feel about this decision affecting these two guys?
Well, when you think about it, with some of the stuff that's gone on in churches already, maybe they should be looking on the bright side. At least the people in there were of age and heterosexual. I wish they'd fire some of the priests that get caught having sex in church as fast as they fire these guys. But when you hire a show like that...
Some of them may end up in jail, the priests.
Well, let's hope so. That'd be a great thing. When you hire a show like this that's more based on stunts, pranks, going over the edge, this is the kind of thing that you have to watch out for. I try to do a show that I paint pictures, I use the language, I do words, but if you have a show that's going to be, can you top this with the nearest naked man jumps into hot chocolate, somebody amputates testicles of a pig on the air for entertainment value. You have to keep going to the next level and the next level and the next level. And I think these guys were doing what they were paid to do. It's like a wife that cooks and cleans and does everything for you. She breaks wind in bed one night, boom, she's out of there. The marriage is over. I think these guys were doing what they got paid to do, and companies that hire this kind of show have to deal with the burning remnants of the aftermath.
Well, Mr. Peters, he makes, in some sense, a good point, which he says is that the management told him to do it. Of course, if the management told me to do that kind of stuff, I wouldn't do it. But does that then mean that the management itself ought to be held accountable, that perhaps their license suspended, their license revoked? How do you feel about that?
Well, I tell you, I mean, my concern about a revocation is that the FCC simply has not been doing its job in terms of upholding the public interest standard for broadcasters. And then all of a sudden, literally probably out of decades of taking no strong action, suddenly they're going to try to revoke a license. I mean, had the FCC been doing its job all along, in my opinion, this would have never happened. But even if it had happened, in such a circumstance, the FCC would have been well within its rights, in my opinion, to pull the license.
Mr. Track, these guys had a 3-year, $30 million deal that they signed in June 2001. Now, these guys had been in Boston. I understand they were in Boston. I've been told that they were fired because on April Fool's Day they went on and said that the mayor had been shot and killed and they lost their jobs. Then they come to New York and they signed a deal for $30 million. Is it likely that after this, they're going to go somewhere else and sign a bigger deal?
Well, let's face it, what they did was probably in bad taste, and every now and then you can make a mistake on the air. Lord knows, I live in a glass house myself. The deal is, I don't think they'll come back with a major company right away because major companies are afraid of protests and people wandering around and shareholders getting nervous and stock prices going up and down. But I think in time, if they've learned from this brutal acid test of what works and what doesn't work, they can find a local station with an owner with some guts and probably resurface back to where they were.
Mr. Peters, what impact do you think this kind of radio has on young people?
Well, I'm a media watcher, and I don't know how many times over the last several years I've seen articles specifically on the decline of civility in the United States in public life, affecting people of all ages. And I don't say I've never read an article where the impact of media hasn't been mentioned, but it would be the exception. I think most people attribute, at least to some extent, a decline in civility in public life affecting people of all ages. Now, if it can affect some of us adults...
But yet it's popular, isn't it? It's hard to understand.
Well, I tell you, I live in New York City,
yes.
and Howard Stern, to my knowledge, is the most, quote-unquote, popular radio talk shows host in New York City. But, out of the people who are listening to radio in the New York City metro area, it's about 7%. 93% of radio listeners don't watch Howard Stern, listen to him, and I don't listen to radio, so I don't even count.
Mr. Track, very quickly, I want to give you the last word here. Does this affect young people negatively? Why is it so popular?
I don't think it affects young people negatively. I think negative young people are attracted to this. I think nowadays you have people on the air who really necessarily can't create magic, so they destroy. They break things up. And I think there's enough disenfranchised people. If you look at some of the music videos, some of the junk that's out there where people are throwing up and breaking things and smashing and dying in wrecks and dismembering themselves, I don't think this affects people. I think it just draws the already offbeat crowd into a house of pain.
I want to thank you, for both of you gentlemen, for being with us. This may be the beginning of a significant change on the radio. We'll have to see. Up next, police in Oregon resort to